update. That will be an update. Where'd it go? Over here. I'm going to give a little bit of a fucking update of what we have going on here. Remember how I made that one video when your grandma was kind of watching me do it? She's getting really excited about it and stuff. Remember that? Well, I just got off the phone with her and she told me I should do another one real quick. This one hopefully doesn't keep doing that zoom, unzoom, or whatever the fuck it was like. It was being fucking stupid. But anyway, obviously it's changed a bit, right? I think, I don't remember anymore because it's, it's been a bit. But I think I completed the actual finding of all the old names of places and stuff like that. I think I'm done, if I remember correctly. Now, some things have changed. Some things have changed quite indeed. I tried to keep it, the color scheme correct as it says on here. I tried. That's if I remembered. I think, there you go. Black equals people. Now, there were a couple things that I thought were interesting that I found here. So, let's begin. We will start, I will start here in modern day Sapernia. There was an update here, you remember, is that I kept calling it Dane or Dane. I still don't really know technically how to say it, but I like Dane. I like the land of Dane, it sounds kind of fucking cool. Now the Cha Wu and the Jinjin are still there, but I found the mountains in there, which are the major mountains of right down the middle of Sapernia. They're called the Metis Mountains, and that's where the Metis ore is produced. Metis is, if I remember, let me see, let me just double check. It's a type of stone, I don't remember, and it's used to make things, I guess. That's the new thing. The Chaffine, because the Chaffite realm. Chaffine is another type of metal of some description that's going to be harvested. Same with the Abletus, and that's the Abletus Mountains, and so that's possibly how those got their names. Other than that, that's the newest I can say there. Moving over here to Ansar, apparently there's only one road into Nosfota, and that would be Bagosva. The Bagosva road leads into Nosfota, and it looks like in there live the Kuota tribes of the Inaku, which they were obviously destroyed. And the Fermoran. Fermoran is also another type of mineral that's, I keep wanting to say mineral, metal. A type of metal that's used, and that the idea was places like Chaffine, Abletus, Fermoran, and the Evanmar, and all that stuff. Those are types of metals. And the thinking was, well, generally, if we know where the location is, I imagine the names of the metal have to do with the names of the places that they were located. Seems to be something that people do when it comes to giving names to things, culturally. Like, I mean, even words like mentor. Like I say mentor, and you know what I'm saying, but that was actually just a man's name, who kind of encompasses like a concept of like a person. It's so weird to think of it like that. It's like the man's name was just mentor, but we're like, God, he was a mentor in that story. That must mean what mentor is. Or like Odyssey, or just weird Greek things. I was kind of going with that vibe here of like, well, the name of the mountain was given to it, and for whatever reason, but what is produced in those mountains seems to be what they're going to end up calling it. If you're trading with these guys up here and like the Jin tribes or whatever, you're trading with them, and they're able to give you a Bletus stone or the Metis stone. I mean, what else are you going to call it? You're going to have this thing in your hand. You're like, well, this is Metis stone. It comes from the Metis Mountains. So that's kind of the idea with some of the new names I found. So like Fomorian, and there's probably more. I just can't think off the top of my head. Bethrin, I think Bethrin might be another one. Anyway, going forward. So the Algiu and the Selenic people inhabit the area of Forsalo and Fomorian. So they must be realms. So the Fomorian realm, kind of in this area here, in Forsalo. I didn't give circles to things and line it up yet, just because, you know, it's already, I got to copy this onto another another map. And well, I'll probably trace the one that I have now and then just write it in. Also a new place, Scythia. It's pronounced Scythia, but spelled Scythia. So we have 3 realms here, 3 territories. Originally it was thought that Forsalo was this entire area, but it looks like, yeah, for Fomorian, Forsalo, and Scythia. Scythia is kind of this area that's divided by this river here, and it kind of breaks this land off, and it's kind of got the vibes of like the Canaanite region. If you want to kind of think of like what Scythia is, just it's the Canaanites. Because, I mean, when I saw it on the map there, and on the new map that I have, and I just kind of looked at that area, I got these vibes of the Canaanite region. You know what I mean? I forgot what it was called in olden times, but like where Israel and shit is, I don't remember what that was called, like, you know, I don't remember the actual old school name for it. So that's another region that was discovered. We do have the Moorish people near Morin, but we found an area down here, Derda. Derda is this kind of, let me see on the new map here. It's essentially like, I don't know the geography, but it kind of like, in this area, it's kind of separate. Kind of hangs out separate, but it's considered part of the continent. It's quite a large body of land. I don't know if that's considered an island technically, or some other weird ass fucking name, I don't know. But Derda is what that is called. And the beauty of it too is, as I'm going through this, these names can stay the same. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe I'll just kind of change the spelling a little bit, maybe modernize it or something. Because a lot of this is already unnamed. So I'm like, well, why don't we just roll with it and just kind of change the names a little bit. The original names of these mountains right here, so from these mountains down here to there, the modern day Gaiufa Mountains, used to be called the Macedonian Mountain. By, I mean, I imagine the Galve, which they're actually, it's pronounced Gave, but I like Galve better. Maybe there was a missing letter somewhere. But the Galve would have called this the Macedonian Mountains, which sounds fucking cool. We could just take Gaiufa and say, well, no, the Gaiufa Mountains are the mountains that are, because I think there's mountains on the other side. Yeah, there's like mountains like kind of over here a little bit. We can just call those the Gaiufa Mountains, because the Macedonian Mountains sound fucking cool. I don't know if they're real or not. Sometimes when you do things like this, you make up names. Even if you sit quietly by yourself and just hone in on words and shit, you'll find that they exist. It's weird like that sometimes. Like either it's in your subconscious or in the collective conscious. I don't fucking know. You know, depends on what you believe is fucking out there. Apparently some people believe that when you are unconscious, your brain or your consciousness disappears and a new one is formed, and your brain isn't part of your consciousness. It's kind of weird like that. There's a lot of weird ways. But whatever. Bethran. New little region here. So modern day, I'd have to ask Jacob. I want to like say like, oh, modern day this, but I just, when it comes to those guys' regions, I'm like, I don't fucking know. But kind of in the land of Quran, essentially. Bethran, and actually I forgot about this up here, the Sightlands. The Sightlands, dude, that's another fucking land there. The Treval River, major river here. Found that. Other than that, it's kind of stayed the same. Coming over here to Vasse, and for some reason it was cut off. Nothing really new here. You got Reeth, Tortog, they're still there. The Valens, the Dunuma, the Kawi people, the Valea, the Rus, and all that shit. Flores Mountain, Spider Tribes. That's all the same. Brief Stol, Turkcen. This is the Assyrian coast I discovered. So, Ansari and Ansirian coast. And this up here is considered the Evenmar. So those are new regions that were found. These little mountains here, so what's north of Serpent's Mouth, in modern day Serpent's Mouth, there's another set of mountains behind the green wall. Apparently those are called the Vault Mountains. Now, the major thing here, I don't remember if I said this is the Teklerhu Forest, but that's what that is. Just like Lorante is right here. Yeeson people, that's another people I forgot all about. Another fucking group of forgotten people. Which has just opened up in the story so much, it's crazy. This. Now, modern day Murphos, a land that is cursed into being considered the Murphos, right? Giant desert, swirling sands, it's a fucking illusion. It's just one massive illusion. One that could kill you. Buried deep beneath the desert are the dead of the great war of the gods. It's just this whole fucking place. Well, I thought the name, the two regions, the two territories inside of what used to be what is now the Murphos, Aquilium and Laupa. I don't know if I really got into it. Laupa looks like it would be the name of the river because there's the Laupa. Something over in Tantorum is called Laupa, for whatever reason. But it's in here, in this region here, that was once beautiful and green, the territories of Aquilium and Laupa. It's interesting. I did not notice that, but I found it. And within that live the Inya people. So, not to be confused with the Innu, which live, where the fuck do they live? They're up here somewhere? Yeah, the Innu people. The Inya. It's so weird, like I forgot all about them. I forgot they even existed. But there is some new things to be had here. And it's just, I don't know, man, it's pretty crazy when you really hone in on this kind of stuff and when you realize just to everybody, the whole world of what it was and what it's become. Now that is storytelling within an understanding. I'm going to probably jump that over here. My cousin's friend. Anyway. The idea was, when it comes to how that shit worked, was I had original concepts of the world. I was mapping it out. I was alone and I was trying to make this all happen. And I would do these little like writing prompts, if you want to call them that. I would do these kind of fun little writing things, and I would need a name of a place, and I'd be like, I don't know, the fucking Aquilium, in the land of Aquilium, the Inya people live, and that would be it. I wouldn't really go into any more detail than that. That's what all those names are on that thing there. It's just things that I would just say, Ansari. It's called Ansari up in the north. And then I'd write like a thing about it. And that's where the roaming beasts would roam, or some shit, like some kind of lore thing. Going back now and kind of finding all these things and putting it on the map there and looking at it made me really realize, like, wow, I could kind of have that idea that the names of places, not only could I keep a lot of it, especially giant blank spots, because you got to think like an Ansar and all that stuff, and Dubois, like it's not really named. I have some names of things, but not that detailed. So I thought, like, well, we could use it in certain spots, you know. In other spots, like in Tantorum, I don't think I could really use it, but, you know, if there are some blank areas, I can definitely throw those in there. Same with anything in the north. Like, it's great to have some stuff in the north there, but behind me I already have the names of the realms. I just don't have any, like, landmark things, the geographical, geographical naming of things, like, you know, Old Man's Rock or fucking the Holy Shit Dike. I don't know. But that's generally all that really was, but it's interesting now I kind of use it going forward. It's a little exciting, honestly. But I think this chair is fucking sweet, by the way. It cost me like $500, but it's pretty sweet. That's pretty expensive. We have a free board here, and I think we should talk about the thing about the Murphos. Kind of really, like, get it into a little bit more detail. Now, I would draw the Murphos, but for the light, I don't want to fuck around with that. Because it doesn't really matter. You saw what it looks like there. Just look at the map if you really need to see this kind of stuff. But generally, the Murphos, like I said, was not what it always was. The entire name of the realm is yet to be found. Like, what did they call this realm? We know that the Inya people live there. We know that. We know that the territories within it, whether these are nation states or you know, you think like in the ancient times where like Babylon and Assyria and the Hittites and all that stuff, like, was the names of, what was it, Aquilian? Okay, Aquilum and Laopa. Were these actual peoples? The names of their, I always want to say empire, but empire means it would be much larger. So, was this the name of actual, you know, peoples, like, again, like the Hittites or the Babylonians or the Egyptians or the Laopans and the Aquilians? You know, like, is that what we're looking at here? Are the Inya a type of, so, okay. What I wonder to myself is, like, thinking of the old map where I said there's like the Donuma people, there's the Valio, there's the Koi, there's the Rus. They all happen to live in the Valons, right? The Valons. Now, is that a nation? Is that our Babylon? Is that something like that? Is a city-state or a multitude of city-states that encompass a nation, if you will? Is that what we're thinking of? Is that what the Valons are? And the peoples like that are just the clans? Are the Inya the actual peoples that inhabit that? But these would be clans of Inya people that are separate? If that makes any sense. So it's like, you know, you have the Laopan Inya and the Aquilum Inya. They're all Inya. They're all Inya people, but there's a divide there. There's some sort of difference there. It's the same as, like, if you get dropped right in the middle of Africa and you see this tribe here and that one there, you're like, well, they're the fucking same as an outsider. Well, why aren't they together? Well, they're different clans. You know, or right in the middle of, like, way back through the year 2000 BC, where they think the Celts might have been. Like, they look the fucking same. Why aren't they just call them all the one thing? It's just like, well, no, there's clans or the Native Americans. Like, why are these? As an outsider perspective, we can't grasp that. We're just like, well, they're all the fucking same there. Why aren't they just living together and be at peace? I think that could be what's going on. So, with these two nations, we're going to kind of roll with the idea that they might be a nation. or nation. I wouldn't really say a nationality because the nation's too big. I just, for the life of me, can't think of the word right now. Because it's not city-states, is it? Like, you know, I have this small territory of land and I got like 1, 2, 3, 4 cities in there. What do you call that? Like, is that a nation at that point? Is it just a territory? You know, like, and it's the Kus people. Kusse. Is that the land of Kus? Is that, like, you know, like, I'm not really good with how to differentiate things in geography or politically. So that's where I get kind of confused of, like, how to word it. I'm just using the word nation right now. But just think of it, like I said, it's city-states, a smattering of city-states that all encompass one people. That's probably what's going on with these two. The interesting part about them, though, is they're linguistically odd. Aquilium sounds more like kind of Roman, like Latin, but kind of a little bit like Gaulish. Like a little smidge of Gaul. Laopa. I don't know what the fuck that sounds like. They just seem so different from each other. And some of the names that are on there, like Ansri is near Evanmar. You got Breve Tholes to the south of that. Danae, Forsalo, Fermorin, Dirda, Bethrin. There's some sort of dialect going on there, but for the life of me, in this moment, I'm not really sure exactly what that is. I'd have to kind of, you know, look at them a little bit more and see. Now, these people that we're speaking of are all under the banner of the Dizarine, which would become the Dizarine. The Dizarine just means forsaken, so forsaken ones. The Inya, the Inyu, the Algu, the Donuma, the Tuxern, Ezio, Valio, Selenic. What's that say? The Marish, the Yizan, the Scythian, the Rus, the Kiss. Those are all clans under the fucking umbrella that is the Forsaken people, to be called the Forgotten people as well. Now, as it was stated, all those people retreated to the forests after the Great War. So that map that we saw would have been before the Great War, before the Merfolk became the Merfolk. Now, how did the Merfolk become the Merfolk? Well, in the Inya, living here with these two nations, found themselves right in the middle of a massive conflict between the Titans and the Anaku and other creatures, Val beasts or whatever, versus the Aeon and the Forgotten clans. They fought on this place. It was said that the Forgotten King cursed this land, enveloped it in the sands, and swallowed the armies whole, which is how they were trapped. Now, not all the fucking Titans were trapped there, just a few. But just like some of the Forgotten people and some of the Anaku, this place, this what would be considered the Merfolk now, is a place of it's a massive graveyard, and it's cursed, and there's just a lot of fucked up things there. I mean, there are strange beasts that still roam, kind of near the end of the section in Eris's story, when they're like right at the end of getting out of the Merfolk, they stumble upon this crazy ancient beast. And it's the whole fucking thing that happens, but it's really, really crazy. The kind of things that were cursed there. And that's why that land is just, it's not just a regular shifting sands desert. It's like, it's just this horrible cursed place. It sucks. I don't probably need to be standing anymore. We can sit. We can sexually sit. Or, I mean, sit down. Or whatever. Yeah, so the Merfolk is just this very strange place, and it wasn't really meant to be. honestly. It's so crazy that the real creation of the Merfolk, it was literally because I think I took a little bit too literally, what is that called? Mountain shadow or something like that. I don't remember what it's called, but it's when the rains can't go high enough. So one side might just be desert. You see that in South America. Was it Chile? I don't know the fucking layout of South America. But when there's major mountains, whatever those ones are called, this is all green and beautiful, but on this side it's all desert. I was like, well, fuck, we gotta have that. And if I look at the first map, I can see it. And I just gave it a name. I was like, oh, fucking Murphos. It kind of became a thing. When the map was redrawn, the Murphos became a whole huge fucking place, and it just needed lore. It needed things, and eventually I think I started to, like, I took Nakem, and I'm like, well, Nakem's a Murph man. We'll just make him a Murphos guy. He can be kind of the embodiment of those people, but not really, because he kind of walks away from his like the lifestyle. You know, he doesn't really adhere to it. He wants to be more like an Aoman. Even though he is an Aoman, it's just the Murphmen are not considered that. And just lore started happening, and I started creating the concept behind who were what I call the mages of Orotan. I was like, well, who the fuck are they? This is an old lore thing. I threw them in the desert and said, that's the mages of Orotan. And then I found Ravian. I'm like, well, Ravian will kind of be some sort of strange bastion for them. And I started to form all this stuff and see, like, I kind of made like a chili, like a stew, which I have to cook soon, actually. But that was the idea. I was like, well, let's just keep throwing stuff in the stew. And so I changed their name to the Saik Oapake, the Seekers of God, Oapake being the creator, their creator. And I made up some characters. I really honed in on Ravian's story. I took that and said, you know, the last stand of Ravian and his people on Falkor Hill, and the Doveniks that were chasing them. I threw that in there, and then I think just randomly saying it was a graveyard, even though I didn't know what that meant. I don't fucking know. We're just gonna say that it's a graveyard. I never really imagined what it could be, and so I said, well, it's a great natural barrier, you know, like between the Tantorum and Adrana, because you know you have the mountains of Gaiavala, which are almost impassable, but also people live there and they're sacred mountains. They don't just let armies walk through it unless there's a reason. So that was how you couldn't get to us. And then the Murphos. And Adrana's got an amazing navy. So it was one of those things where I tried to bulletproof my people so you couldn't get to them. One of those things, like, but it's amazing what it kind of turned into, and what happened, and just how these conflicts started piling up. And then I was like, well, there's gotta be, like, why did the Saik live there? And I was like, well, the Saik were the original followers of Ravian. And then I honed in on what Ravian might have been. I'm like, he might have just been like a Jesus Christ, to which Adrana's like the Jews, where it's like, nah, you know what I mean? Like, he was sort of like, his father was the son of the first one that was banished, and who owned the northern side of Adrana, like kind of above Aval and all that stuff, northern Avalia. And there's this whole story, and he went over to Tantorum and preached about the Whisper and stuff like that, and then he had his followers go out in the desert, and that's where that thing happened, the Doveniks and all that. And there was these miracles that happened, and then he elected to stay there and hold on to this, like, barrier. Like, he created a barrier with the magic that's imbued within him, and the followers of him would have turned into the Saik Oapake, right? But then I started realizing, like, no, also, Adrana would send their undesirables and their exiled peoples and anything else like that into the desert. Like that was a form of punishment. Much like how, and it's like, it's a lot lesser, but if you think about like how, you know, Great Britain would send their criminals to Australia, and that just kind of became a nation. It's much the same in the Merfolk. Like they're just exiled peoples. And that's why they're looked at as lesser. Like though they are Eomen, though they're the same as a man from Adrana or Tantorum, they're not looked at the same. They're different. They're just a little different. They're not as, they're cursed. They're exiled. They're dirty, grubby delinquents and shit like that. And so that's also something that kind of formed in the Merfolk, and it just kind of became this place of like on the new map, I didn't even want to draw anything. I left it blank. I just wrote the word Merfolk because it's like, not only does that help with, well, it's shifting sands, like nothing's the same. Like the shifting sands in this world mean, I think I've said it where it's like, you could start at one point and get to the other and it takes you 50 years. Or the same person could, it takes them 10 seconds. There's something strange about that place. Time and space don't naturally exist, and it's just like there's a ward over that area. So I'm like, I can't draw that because it's not the same for everybody. Eris going through the Merfolk is not going to be the same as another character going through, or Cypherus. Their journey's a little bit different. Which is going to happen eventually. So that was like this, the Merfolk was just this place that it happened on accident, and then it started to get real. And I was like, well, fuck that, man. Like, let's roll with this. Who cares? Let's see what happens. And that's where being fluid with creation can really help you. Like, you can pigeonhole yourself into things, but sometimes just guessing and gambling on ideas like can kind of pay off. And the Merfolk in of itself has become like a very important place in the entire story. More important than I had realized, because this would be a whole other subject, but when I think of like the book 1, which I've been kind of editing and adding parts to, I did it so wrong. Like the last video, I said the parts that I didn't want to write. Well, I did them. I did them very hastily, but I can go back and edit and stretch them out a little bit once I do a reread. But there are so many, like, I don't know how to do it, you can tell, because there are so many elements where I have to implement new ideas and then kind of, oh my god, I exaggerate it into the next few chapters, you know, or at least kind of mention it. Halfway through the book, like, oh fuck, that happened, and he didn't even, you know, it didn't happen in the original story, so he's not going to acknowledge it. I got to write a whole new section where he's like contemplating it. I did this book so wrong because I thought I built the world, and then I kind of started writing, and it was so blank, and then I kept adding things, but the more I added, the more the story changed. It was like, you know, originally the story, like, I started writing and I didn't even know what Eris was going to do. I didn't even know the purpose of it. That's mind-blowing. You know what I mean? I got like a quarter way through the book and I was just like, I don't know why he's going here. I don't know what's going on. And then I just had to rewrite it so much, and then characters change. Like, Cypherus, like, it's so crazy. Cypherus was a totally different person. He was more Gandalf. He was like this kind of wizard guy. And I changed him to be like just a fucking dude. Just a regular guy who's confused and like has, you know, issues with how he handles things and emotional issues and stuff. That had to, like, I had to rewrite so many chapters and like, or strip like chapters to their bones and like rewrite entire dialogue sections and stuff like that, to the point where it's like, and then I had to delete the entire section and just rewrite it all. Like, this book has gone through like crazy amounts of changes. because I didn't plan it right. So it's a lesson learned that I need to fucking plan better. Because I thought I did, you know, like I said, I didn't purposely like, well, fuck it, we'll see what happens. I just didn't know what to do, so there were times where I would stream of consciousness. But that stream of consciousness writing, I would actually end up using because I really liked it. I just had to kind of change things around. And it was all an accident. It was so weird. Like, there was a point where we were in, like, at one point, Eris was walking with Alistar right after the first section of the book to go to the fucking mountains to a temple. And then I'm like, no. And then it changed to where Eris and then Nahum and then Cyphrus all went to Crossroads, and then they fought some sort of creature, and then they had to, I don't even remember, do something else. And I was like, well, fuck that. And so that didn't happen. And then they were going to go and meet Vathi at a monastery. So it was Nahum, Cyphrus, and him. And then I said, well, no. And then all of a sudden, Nahum and Eris by themselves were going to meet. We're going to go to a place and meet a new character called Titus. And then they were all going to go with another new person into these fucking caves and have this Moria, Mines of Moria kind of section. And I scrapped that idea. Like, I wrote that shit. Like, I got to a certain point, and that's how it was easy to break up. Like, this first part, second part, this is what they're going to do. And I tried so many different things, and I just deleted it. Or tried to make, scrap it. Or tried to pick all the good parts out of it and keep it, but then, like, the bones of it, but then maybe add new stuff around it. I couldn't. I had to just delete it. And finally, the story now, I'm not ever going to be happy with it. I already know that. But it's gone through so many fucking changes. Like, I'll read and I'm like, wow, that's probably the oldest part of the whole book. Like, the book has got layers upon layers of, like, adding new things, editing parts, totally different writing styles. Like, one of the oldest parts, like, man, I can see it a mile away, and I just did it again with, like, the stuff that wasn't in the book, this high story stuff. I literally yesterday, the day before, was splicing in, like, okay, like, Eris has no clue about it, so it doesn't affect him at all, except near the end of the book when I started, like, getting an idea that there was a prophecy. But the Cyphrus parts, luckily I broke him off so I could add in the prophecy of it, the prophecy of it, the prophecy of it. Because there was no prophecy kind of thing. There was no hero's journey like he's the hero. He was just some fucking kid. I mean, I'm still like I don't know if that's going to sound rushed or not. I think I made a note where I literally got to go through to make sure I have a beginning, middle, and an end for the Rainbringer stuff, or apparently, like, Eris had a dream about something, and then that dream has to do with the prophecy. I just made that up, so it's like, well, now I gotta think, like, okay, the dreams have to do with prophecies or something. So I'm still, like, in this, like, limbo of, like, fuck, this is hard. This is so hard to do. I know we were talking the Murphos, but the Murphos was the very reason this all happened. Because it was created. I'm like, well, I gotta go through that fucking place. What's out there? And that the creating of the Murphos was probably one of the catalysts to make the story go through these insane fucking changes. Like, I have at least, like, 3 different versions of the book. This version has Alistar, like, is still a companion of Eris. Then all of a sudden he's, like, gone. Well, no more Alistar. He doesn't exist. Because that was before Jacob got involved. And then I have this whole one where they go into the mines with Titus. And him and Nahum kind of go back and forth. And I'm like, these mines were apparently called Kalendre. And they are the creator's mind. This abandoned place of the creator's mind was once there, but now has become like a cave. a cave network, a massive fucking cave network, where his brain was, and it was a whole fucking thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? I just kept like, I felt like Tolkien, where I remember reading where it said he got stuck in the mines of Moria for like 3 years or something, or 2 years, where he just didn't know what to do. That's what I felt like. I'm like, I'm just going in these mines and I don't know why I'm here. What the fuck is going on? That could be something I use later, or for another story, or change the names or something. Because it is a cool concept of what the cave network is, but it was just, I mean, this book, I feel like I've stripped it so many times that it's barely holding together. That's kind of what it feels like. It's just barely holding together. Like, I had a terrifying thought, like, what if I just have to rewrite all this? The story's there, but I have to rewrite the whole fucking thing. And we're talking 134,000 words. I gotta just rewrite the whole fucking thing. So there's a good continuity into it. Like a beginning, middle, of an end. A beginning, middle, and end for everything. Everybody has to have, and they generally do, but they're just the high story part. The prophecy shit. I'm making up as I go. Still. Like, I mean, you'd see all these videos that I've been talking about this shit. You'd think I have it, but there's so much detail that I don't have yet. And how it affects the character. Like, I know, but then sometimes, for me, certain words will throw me off. Like, I know the prophecy. Then there's just like certain words that's like at a certain time where I'm like, what? I don't know. Yeah, you know this is going to happen. But then I found those words to get there, but then what about these ones? Like, how do I connect those ones? It's so weird how my mind works sometimes, where I overanalyze things, and I have a really hard time with that. I wish I could explain it better. If I sit and talk about what Eris is meant to do, I could do that and say, well, he's meant to help bring the world back to what it should be, the final sacrifice. He is the stone line, like the chosen by the Whisper to be his tool in this world, to free the Whisper first, and all that stuff. And in order to do that, he must transcend, and so he has to go on this journey thing. And then from there, the prophecy gets more and more. But then if I say, okay, book 1, now all of a sudden I'm talking about like what the Merfolk people know. They call him the Rainbringer and stuff like that. I'm like, well, what about this prophecy? Like, how do I connect the Rainbringer to that? Like, I just said a new word. Like, how does this work? And so I was able to kind of figure out, like, no, it's like the Merfolk will come back to like, he will begin, like, it's a marking of a moment of the Merfolk coming back to life again. Things are about to change. But then it's like, how do I connect that to the Whisper thing? It's like, fuck, I don't know. I said a different word. I said different things. I didn't. Now I'm kind of like just fucking stuck. It's like, it's hard to commit to something like that when you feel like very. Oh man, when you feel very like. I don't know how to explain it. That's the best way I can explain it. Like, new words found that thing. You just attached a whole new arm or a mold of clay onto this model, but then you're like, well, fuck, how do I make that a part of this? And so I get stuck, and that's what'll pause my writing. You know, the chapter I might be working on. I'm like, well, fuck, I don't know now. You know, like when Jaheir and Cypress were talking about Eris being the one, and it's like, well, I know what the Serpentine are doing, and I know what they want. But then a new word is said. And I'm like, well then, like, do they still want that? Because it kind of doesn't really make sense. Like, how is him and Cypress's son, like, what are they using him for? Like, even I'm still, like, fucking confused. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, if I am, the reader definitely is going to be fucking confused because the author can't figure this shit out. And so it's like, it sucks because it's just nobody. I don't know. I just feel like if I'm confused, I'm damn sure the reader will be too, and that's not good. And how can I? Like, do I need to either rewrite it or do I keep that kind of a confusing concept because life is confusing? And I thought about that too. It's like, well, life isn't just this fucking easy thing. I don't pick up a fucking book. I'm like, I know my purpose. That's not how that works. You have to go through experiences, then find your purpose. It's not set in front of you. Like, here's the book of your life. And you're like, oh, thank God, it says I have to go work here real quick. It doesn't do that. It's a big mystery. So I'm like, maybe it's authentic. I generally know what Eris has to do. In the grand scheme of things, I know what he needs to do in book 2. It's just everything built around him is not stable. Because, Cypress doesn't know what's going on. He does, but he doesn't. It's like he thinks he knows because they talk about it enough. But then shit starts to happen and he feels like me, where it's like, well, now that things are happening, I don't know if I know. And there's a lot of doubt there. And I don't know if I've captured that well enough. Of Cypress being full of doubt about all this. Like, I don't know if this is really going on. Like, Jahir and all them say that this is important and stuff, but I don't really see it. I mean, maybe it is captured. I really hope so, man. I really hope that it can be seen how nobody really knows what's going on. Like, so for instance, like Jahir. He's probably the most in the know guy. Weirdly next to Nakum. Nakum's more in the know when it comes to, like, as a spy master would know. But Jahir is like the one that's in the know. And even sometimes, like, he's confidently like, I don't know. I mean, all my characters generally are. They're all just looking at each other wide-eyed like, because they don't know what's going on. And I mean, that was not on purpose. It's just, that's my character. I'm such a, like, fucking person. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Like, that's who I generally am as a person. So it shows in the writing. Even my most, like, intelligent, like, very thought out and very cunning guy is kind of like, you know what I mean? Because I don't know how to write that person because I'm not that person. It's so difficult to channel that. And the battery's about to die. So that's that. This is a shorty because I didn't charge the battery. But until next time, I guess. I don't know how much longer I got, so sorry it ended quick, but it had to.